Hello! Today we're looking at the Ada Potato game. Let's try playing it to see what we have starting off. They give us a simple game where there is a picture of Ada that alternates to a picture of a potato. We need to click the image when it is an Ada. If we click it when it's a potato, we lose points, but if we click it when it's an Ada, we gain points. So ideally you try and get as many points as you can, as long as you keep playing. Going through the code base. Up at the top we have some initial introduction. Then we get our regular set of imports. Remember, we don't have to understand exactly how this works. The important thing is it's handled for us. It's used down near the bottom of the code, and this will be consistent for all the games that we have. So we can ignore that for the most part, and our responsibility is understanding all the code in between. Up at the top of the file, we have our game constants, which are global variables that we define once and then never change. It's very important that we never change them during execution of our game, because then they're no longer constants. We're allowed to change them in the meantime to whatever values we want them to be, but during execution, aka later in the program, we shouldn't try and update their value in any way. So we're going to definitely avoid doing that. Every game has a width and a height for the window, has a background color, a game title. Our game also has the switch timer, so how long Ada is on the screen before she flips. For now, we'll leave it at 60, but we'll have to address this at some point. Now, after that, we define our world. First, we define the world as a record, and then we give what an initial world looks like. These fields are not particularly well documented right now. Our world is fairly poorly described beyond their type. So let's spend a second just to explain what each one of these are. First, we have the mode, which represents whether or not we are looking at an Ada or a potato. So it's a string value, either Ada or potato, and it alternates between them, particularly lowercase it looks like. Then down here, we have the timer, a integer counting up slowly, counting down every update until it hits 0. And then finally we have the player's current score represented as an integer, and this matches to the initial world values that we've chosen. So initially the world is Ada for the mode, switch timer, which we said before was 60 for the timer, and 0 for the initial score. Over the course of the game, our world will modify its state. So the mode switches between Ada and potato, the timer counts down, eventually resets back to 60, and the score is either going to increase or decrease depending on the player's actions. Remember, this is our snapshot of the entire world. We load in two images, the Ada and the potato, using arcade.loadTexture. We store them in constants so that we can refer to them later. These images must be in the same folder, otherwise this won't work. So if we check out our configuration, you see that I have Ada and potato in the same folder as my game2 Ada potato. Following that, I have a pair of drawing functions. Draw image centered is a helper function for draw world. Draw world's whole deal is it draws either Ada or the potato, depending on the current world. If the world's mode is Ada, we draw the Ada image that we loaded in earlier in the program. If the world's mode is potato, we draw the potato image. We're using draw image centered, which does a little bit of math to position the image that we're drawing in the center of the window. Half the window's width for the X value, half the window's height for the Y value, using the given image's width and height and drawing the actual image. We didn't have to move this into a helper function. We could have had the function inline, but this is a much more explanatory name than the code we have here. So we've taken something that's a little complex and would be repeated, given it a nice name, and we're calling that instead. So I think that's a little bit easier to read and comprehend what the point of this code is. Makes it easier to debug and isolate issues. We also draw the score. Drawing the score, we have to give it the world's score as a string, the X and Y will be 0, 0, so the bottom left. We're writing in a white font, and we're using a font size of 50 pixels. So this is our world drawing, very straightforward. At any given time, we're just drawing either an eta or potato, and the current score, whatever it is. The game logic then is distributed across a couple different functions. The handle key, handle mouse aren't involved, but update world and switch mode are. So let's get them both on the screen if we can. So we have switch mode written first, but update world is really the starting point. It takes in the current world and updates its timer and the current mode. The timer's logic is very simple. If it's greater than 0, we decrease it by 1. That less than or equal to sign can also be written instead as world timer minus 1. Exact same idea. Otherwise, we're going to reset the timer to the switch timer value and call switch mode on the world. Switch mode, another very basic function. It has an if statement. If the current mode is eta, we set it to be potato. Otherwise, we set the mode to be eta. If it wasn't eta, we set it to be eta. When we call this, every time we call switch mode on the world, it will alternate between eta and potato. Skipping down, the last bit of this is the handle mouse function, which has, again, very basic logic. If, when the world clicks, when we get a mouse click, if the world's mode is eta, we gain a point. Otherwise, we lose a point. So that's pretty straightforward. Handle motion doesn't have anything inside of it. Same deal with handle key. So those functions aren't going to be used at all.